All right, so let's look at arrays in C++. When you have an array, you probably are working with a list of primitives or a list of objects. You're going to have several items in your program that are the same data type. And if you find yourself saying item 1, item 2, item 3, or something like that, that is an indication that you need an array. So let's look at an array of integers. We're going to put the data type there. We're going to give our array a name, like num, and then we put brackets on the end of it. And inside the brackets, you're going to specify how many items or elements are in your list. Each place in the array is called an element. Each element has an index or a position. When we say we want 10 integers, we end up with positions or indices of 0 through 9. But from there on out, you can use these like you use your regular variables. You can say that num sub 0 equals 1, or 10, or whatever you want it to be. You can use these in cout statements. Like that. You can get information and put it in an array from the user. So I could say cout, enter a number. And then if I want to store that in my array, I can cin, and I can work with any index I want to. I don't have to use them in order. I could put this in let's say 6. And so now I have a 10 stored at index 0, and I'll have whatever the user puts at index 6, and my indices run from 0 to 9. We do not get index 10, even though we specified we wanted 10. If we actually put 10 in here, we would be going out of bounds, and we're breaching memory that does not belong to our array. So I'll leave that at 6 for now. Normally you would do these in order. You would go 0, 1, 2, 3, but I'm showing you that you can use whatever you want there, as long as it fits the size of your array. So we could display that after they enter the number. You entered num sub 6. Type the word sub. And that should work just fine. Let's try this out. All right, so we get our 10 here from this cout statement. And then it's prompting us for a number, so I'll just put in any integer will work. I'm going to put in a -800, and it says you entered -800. And so that works just fine. So you can do this with any data type you want. You don't have to use integers. Let's say we wanted to get a list of names. Make sure you have string included up here at the top. If I wanted a string array, I can say string names. I can put 5 names in here. And then I could prompt the user to enter those names, or I will just, for the sake of time, I will just hard code these in. I give the name of the array, the brackets, and I'll start with 0, and I'll fill it up all the way through 4. So we'll just type some names in here. All right, now I've got my 5 names. It's common to want to use a for loop when you're working with an array, because the for loop makes it really easy to process an array. So to set up a for loop, it would look something like this. We'll say I equals 0, I less than the size of the array. You have to keep track of this yourself. C++ does not have a built-in length or size function when working with a primitive array. And then we'll go I++. So this is going to start us at index 0, which our array starts at 0 always. And then we run through 1 less than 5. That'll get us to the 4. And we'll just display the name. So cout name, and then I'll print the I, and that will show us what index we're on. Put a space there, and then names sub I inline. All right, let's run the program. And there are our names with their indices. So you can see how a for loop makes that pretty short and sweet, and this would work for an array of any size. I could display everything in the array with just, this one for loop. And you would change this number based on the size of the array. If you wanted to show everything, let's say in reverse, we would start at 4. We would say while I is greater than or equal to 0. And then instead of I++, we can go I minus minus. And that will give us all the names in reverse order. So get comfortable with this. This does not go away. You're going to use for loops and arrays for the rest of your programming career. Let's look at using an array with classes. I'm going to create an employee class here, and then we will create an array of employees and process their paychecks. So an employee is going to have a name, a pay rate, hours, and gross. And it would have more than that, but that's enough for this demonstration. That will take care of us. And then we're going to have a few public functions here. We'll get the info on the employees. So get info. And inside here, I will prompt the user to enter the name and the other information. And that should work just fine for getting the information from the user. The next thing we want to do is process that information. So I'm going to write a function called calcPay. Inside calcPay, I'm going to determine if the employee has worked overtime, and then we will calculate the gross accordingly. So if the hours are greater than 40, the gross is going to equal the rate times 40 plus the hours minus 40 times the rate times 1.5. Otherwise, it's very simple. We just do gross equals rate times hours. And then after we have calculated everything, let's write a function to display everything. So just a few cout statements here with the labels. Name. And I'm going to add a little bit here just to make this look nice. You should always set your decimals to 2 places if you're working with money. So I'll come up to the top and include IOmanip. And then set precision to 2, followed by fixed. See how this works? So if I'm going to use an array I'm going to type the data type, which is employee. I'm going to give my array a name. I'm just going to use E to keep it short, unless they have 3 employees. And I'm going to process this array using a for loop. So I equals 0, I less than 3, I plus plus, not C out, E sub I dot get info, and then we'll run a separate for loop. So after all the information has been entered, we can just copy and paste this. We'll call calc pay, and then we call display. And let's see how that works. So my first employee, obviously going to be Fred, works for $10 an hour, works 45 hours a week. And I use these numbers so that I can check my math. If I get a 475 gross, then I know my math is correct. Next employee, Sally. Let's say she works $10 an hour, but only works 40 hours a week. And then we've got Beth, who is just killing it. And here's our display statement after our calculations have run. We do get 475 here for Fred, so that looks good. Sally also looks good. Easy math, 10 times 40, 400. We know our math is correct. And there we go. So that works just fine. And this is how you would use an array when working with a class or a structure.